You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the presidency.
Well, let's see. I'm at 42 and you're at 3, so far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
So far I'm doing better. You know, you started off over here, Jeb. You're moving over further and further. Pretty soon you're going to be off the end.
Well, Jeb Bush trying to jumpstart his campaign and Donald Trump trying to shut him down at this week's Republican debate. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume, Julie Pace, who covers the White House for the Associated Press, syndicated columnist George Will, and Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Well, let's start talking about the Republican race and the debate with the latest Fox News national poll. You can see it right there. It shows Trump is now at 39%. That's up 11 points from last month, and he's 21 points ahead of Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Marco Rubio is the only other Republican in double digits. Britt, I think it's fair to say that you and George had some doubts early on about the viability of Donald Trump. Fair to say now that you believe he can actually win this nomination?
I remember saying that I thought he'd be with us a while, but I didn't know the while would be as long as it's turned out to be.
Or this much with us.
Exactly right, this much with us. That's right. Yes, I think it's distinctly possible. Now, it should be noted that we've now reached the stage in this race where national polls matter less than they have, because it's now a series of state-by-state contests, and the picture may be somewhat different. Iowa's up first. Ted Cruz is doing very well out there. It's certainly possible he could win the state, and the question then becomes, would that puncture this invincibility aura that Donald Trump has had about him since he's done so well for so long and is now higher in the national polls than he's ever been? I don't think we know the answer to that, but it could happen.
Julie, I think it's clear from listening to the year-end news conference and from other comments he's made that President Obama has, I don't think it's overstating to say, open contempt for Donald Trump and for the things that Trump says. But as they read these polls, and I know they do, did they begin to think maybe they were slow to recognize something that's going on in this country that they hadn't fully appreciated?
I think they're surprised by how well Trump's message is connecting with the public, because you'll often hear the president talk about things that are said among Republican candidates or things that are said on cable news, perhaps, and say, well, you know, the American people don't really feel that way. And now you're seeing that a lot of Americans do connect with a lot of the things that Trump is saying. I also think, though, that the White House and the Clinton campaign think that they very easily could beat Donald Trump in a general election, and even if he's not the nominee, that they could use what he's saying now to cast all of the Republicans in the same light.
Then there was the face-off, fascinating face-off during the debate between Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz over the question of immigration reform. Here's just a taste of that.
Does Ted Cruz rule out ever legalizing people that are in this country illegally now?
I have never supported legalization, and I do not intend to support legalization.
But it's more complicated than that, because it now turns out that back in 2013, when the Senate was debating comprehensive immigration reform, Cruz offered an amendment which would have allowed the 11 million people in this country illegally to hold on, or actually to gain, legal status. Here is what Cruz said back then in 2013. Here's what he was forced to say this week.
They would still be eligible for legal status, and indeed, under the terms of the bill, they would be eligible for LPR status as well, so that they are out of the shadows. I oppose amnesty. I oppose citizenship. I oppose legalization for illegal aliens. I always have, and I always will.
George, how much trouble is Cruz in now on the immigration issue, and to what degree has Rubio at least succeeded in kind of muddying up the differences between them?
Well, it's certainly a muddy situation. This, by the way, is what we're talking about. That is the Senate immigration bill.
Well, you got to pick that up. Our audience, guys, here it is. What is that?
1,197 pages of comprehensive immigration reform. This is the bill they're talking about.
Back in 2013.
Exactly. It's good. You want to know what the average annual wage of an immigrant animal sorter in 2016 should be? It's $9.84, by the way. It's all in here. The senators know everything. That's why it had to be that big. The question is, was Ted Cruz trying to kill the bill with an amendment that said, here's legalization, but that's the end of the line? It would forever preclude a path to citizenship.
Which we should point out is what the Democrats, like Chuck Schumer, were demanding as their part of the deal.
Precisely. So Ted Cruz was being disingenuous when he said, I offer you this, knowing that it would drive away Democratic support and kill the bill. If you're submitting an amendment that is a poison pill, something designed to kill the bill, you have to deny that you're doing what you manifestly are doing. Now, he has, in his defense, he can say, look, Jeff Sessions understood. He supported me.
Jeff Sessions, the senator from Alabama, who is a fierce critic of legalizing illegal immigrants.
And Chuck Schumer recognized what I was doing and said so at the time. So it was transparent, if disingenuous. The question you asked is, will it hurt him? I suspect not. A, because it's a very complicated situation. We're talking about Senate procedures and all the rest. Except that in this case, Ted Cruz looked like what he really is, which is a very bright, talented lawyer. The man, the clerk for Chief Justice Rehnquist and the Solicitor General of Texas and all the rest. Therefore, to the extent that he looked to be finely parsing difficult words, he looked lawyerly, and that's never a good thing.
Juan, I'm going to give you a choice. You can weigh in on that, or you can talk about the Democratic debate.
Well, let me just quickly say I understood it a little differently, George. He may have been disingenuous and lawyerly, but I think it was pretty clear that he said at the time, I think he went on the record and said that it was not a poison pill, that he was not trying to kill the bill, and that would have allowed it to go forward. So now for him to come back and say he wasn't for it, it seems to me to be expedient and politically in touch with the idea that he wants to put Rubio on the defensive because Rubio can't get away from his support for the immigration reform bill, which is, for him, politically very difficult with the Republican base. I will say this about last night with Mrs. Clinton. You opened up with Carly Fiorina about Mrs. Clinton saying we finally got the right strategy post-Paris with now
we're finally where we need to be.
Right, with the UN and the Obama administration now looking at taking a more aggressive stance, and you have some of the Arab countries coming together. But clearly the polls suggest that most Americans think we still don't have a strategy sufficient to give them some sense of confidence or assurance about ISIS-type attacks, even lone wolf attacks.
You got to know, Brit, that the Republicans are going to jump all over that and say, we got ISIS where we want them, really?
Yeah, I mean, if you come out and say we are now where we want to be with regard to a strategy against ISIS, I think the American people as a whole, and certainly the Republican candidates, are going to have a field day with that, because I don't think anybody thinks that except perhaps President Obama. I can't believe she thinks that.
The Democrats, it was interesting last night, the Democrats thought she portrayed her as the hawk on the stage, that she is too aggressive and too much into regime change. Yeah. So that gives you a sense, though, the Democratic base doesn't have a problem with this.
I understand that, but the Democratic base isn't going to have a problem with her. They like her. She's fine as far as they're concerned, and that's why she's leading so much in the polls. The question for her is, can she expand on that to get a majority? And, you know, she faces the problem that Barack Obama did so brilliantly well among minority groups, African Americans in particular, but Hispanics as well. Can she match that? And when she's running around saying we're doing fine against ISIS, I'm not sure that helps her.